The first time I saw them, I thought death had learned to walk. Tall, silver-skinned, their faces like polished masks, their voices a strange whisper that crawled under the skin. They didn't call themselves invaders, not at first. No, they called themselves purifiers. They came with the arrogance of gods, stepping through torn skies with their fleets blotting out the sun. I was a soldier once, just a man in uniform, gun in hand, pride in chest. My name didn't matter anymore, not when the cities burned and governments collapsed in days. The world I swore to defend folded in on itself like paper thrown in a fire. Washington turned to ash before I could even take my next breath. London, Moscow, Beijing, gone. They didn't negotiate. They didn't occupy. They erased. The aliens saw us as a mistake. "Your species is a disease," one of their leaders said, standing above a pile of children's bodies as if reciting a sermon. "You multiply, you consume, you destroy your world and spill over into others. You have no balance, no control. We are here to end you before you infect the stars." I watched them slaughter entire towns with weapons that sang in the air, leaving nothing but red vapor. Genocide wasn't their side mission. It was the mission. And for the first time in my life, I knew what helplessness really was. We ran. Humanity ran. We hid in ruins, in sewers, in caves that still smelled of smoke from burned-out villages. I remember sitting there with a handful of survivors, breathing shallow, trying not to cough, because one cough meant death. The aliens didn't hunt us like enemies. They hunted us like pests. But here's the truth they didn't know, the one that boiled in my chest every night as I clenched my fists so hard my nails drew blood. If you back humanity into a corner, you don't just kill them, you create monsters. I wasn't the only one who felt it. I could see it in the eyes of every man who lost his wife, every father who buried his son, every boy who had to pretend to be a soldier because there were no men left to fight. Grief turned to rage. Rage turned to hunger. We didn't want to survive anymore. We wanted revenge. It started with whispers in the ruins. People saying things like, "If they call us monsters, maybe it's time we become monsters." I laughed the first time I heard it. Monsters? Against fleets and gods? But the more I saw, the more blood filled the streets, the less funny it sounded. We found their weaknesses, not because we were smart, but because we were desperate. Their armor could crack if you hit the same spot twice. Their ships could falter if you overloaded their power cores. They weren't invincible. They just thought we were too broken to try. One night, I stood on the rubble of what used to be my city. The wind carried the stink of burned flesh, the silence broken only by the buzzing of alien drones. My hands shook, not from fear anymore, but from fury. And I said it out loud, to the stars, to the fleets blotting out the moon. "You wanted monsters. We'll show you monsters." And that was the night humanity changed. The night I made that promise to the stars, I thought I was alone, a broken soldier shouting at shadows. But anger is contagious, and rage has a way of finding kindred spirits. Within days, I wasn't the only one whispering about becoming monsters. We were camped in the subway tunnels under what used to be the city. The smell down there was unbearable, burned plastic, piss, and death. But it was safer than breathing the air above, where the drones hunted with their endless eyes. Our group was small then, maybe 20 of us, half of them too young, the other half too old. I knew the look of broken men, but I also knew the look of men who had nothing left to lose. "Tell us again," a boy asked me one night. He couldn't have been older than 16. "Tell us what you said about monsters." I looked around. Their faces were hollow, but their eyes, those damn eyes, were alive. They wanted to hear it, needed to. "They call us a disease," I said. My voice carried in the tunnel, scraping against the tiles. They call us unworthy. They want us gone. But diseases don't go quietly. They adapt. They spread. You can't kill every rat, every cockroach, every parasite. You kill some, and the rest come back stronger. I paused, letting the silence choke us all. Then I said it, slow and sharp. They wanted monsters, so let's give them monsters. The boy grinned, a mad grin, the kind that only comes from someone who's lost everything. And one by one, the others nodded. That night, something shifted. We stopped being survivors. We started becoming soldiers again. Not soldiers of a nation, those days were gone, but soldiers of vengeance. Our first target was a patrol, 3 of the silver-faced bastards and their drones, sweeping through the ruins like hunters. Normally, we'd hide. That night, we waited. I had an old rifle, half-rusted, half-bent, barely able to fire straight. The kid, his name was Daniel, had a pistol that looked like it belonged in a museum. Others had knives, pipes, anything sharp enough to spill blood. Against their weapons, their armor, it was suicide. But we had one advantage. Hate makes you patient. We tracked their movements for hours, watching how they moved, how the drones circled. Their arrogance made them predictable. They didn't see us as a threat. They never checked corners, never scanned the ground beneath rubble. Why would they? To them, we were already ghosts. When the time came, we struck like rats. Fast, dirty, without warning. I'll never forget the sound. The rifle cracking, Daniel's pistol stuttering, knives plunging into gaps in their silver skin. The aliens made no screams, only this low, inhuman hum, as if their throats couldn't understand pain. Their blood was black, thick, reeking of iron. One of them grabbed me, lifting me off the ground like I weighed nothing. Its mask was inches from my face, eyes empty holes staring into mine. I jammed the barrel of my rifle into its mouth and pulled the trigger until nothing was left but smoke and shards of metal. When it was over, the patrol was dead. The drones smashed. My people stood there, shaking, covered in blood that wasn't ours. Daniel laughed, a manic, broken laugh. The others joined in, one by one. Not joy, not relief, something darker. That was the first strike, the first time the hunters bled. And it felt good. Word spread fast. Survivors came crawling out of the cracks, drawn by the whispers of humans who fought back. Within weeks, our 20 became 100. Not soldiers, not really. Farmers, teachers, construction workers, all carrying rage heavier than their weapons. We didn't build an army. We built a pack of wolves with human faces. We learned to fight dirty. Explosives ripped from broken cars became bombs. Traps made from collapsed buildings crushed patrols. We poisoned their water supplies with rotting corpses and human waste. We carved messages into their dead, words smeared in blood. You wanted monsters, we'll show you monsters. The aliens didn't understand fear at first. They didn't run. They didn't beg. But they noticed. Their patrols grew larger. Their drones circled longer. And for the first time, their heads turned when they walked past the shadows. We were getting inside their skin. Of course, it wasn't victory without cost. Every strike we made came with losses. Good men gutted by their plasma blades, children vaporized in drone sweeps, mothers torn apart before their sons' eyes. Every time we killed one of them, they killed 10 of us. But the strange thing was, we didn't care anymore. Death wasn't something we feared. Death was something we carried like a badge. One night, after an ambush that left half our group dead, Daniel sat beside me, blood drying on his face. He was only 17 by then, his eyes too old for his age. "You think we'll win?" he asked. I didn't answer at first. The city was burning in the distance, flames crawling up shattered skyscrapers like veins. "Winning doesn't matter," I said finally. "What matters is making them afraid, making them regret ever stepping foot on this world." Daniel nodded, but I saw it in his face. He wanted more than regret. He wanted annihilation, and so did I. Months passed, and the pack grew. We weren't scattered survivors anymore. We were the beginning of something bigger, something the aliens had never faced before. They thought genocide would erase us, but all it did was sharpen our teeth. Our strikes became bolder. We hit supply lines, sabotage points, even their camps. We left their dead hanging from bridges, their blood smeared across walls. They still called us vermin, but I saw it. I saw hesitation in their movements. I saw their drones sweep wider. I saw the way they started killing slower, more carefully, as if they were testing the air for traps. We had made them cautious, and cautious soldiers make mistakes. The real turning point came when we captured one alive. It was a female, if their kind even had genders. Smaller than the others, though still taller than me. She was part of a patrol that stumbled into one of our traps, an old building rigged with explosives. Her squad died instantly, but she survived, pinned under rubble, her armor cracked. The pack wanted to kill her right there, tear her apart, but I stopped them. "No," I said. "We need to know what they fear." We dragged her back to the tunnels, chained her to the concrete with whatever scraps of metal we could find. She didn't scream. She didn't beg. She just stared at us with those hollow eyes. I questioned her for hours, demanded answers. Why us? Why now? Why genocide? Her reply was calm, almost bored. "You are a mistake. You spread without purpose. We cleanse mistakes." I hit her. My fists broke against her silver skin. Still, she didn't flinch. But when Daniel leaned in, knife in hand, and whispered, "You think we're a disease? Diseases mutate. We don't just die. We adapt." I saw something flicker in her eyes. Just for a second. Fear. That was all I needed. From that moment on, we stopped fighting like humans. We became predators. No more hiding, no more running. We hunted them, stalked them, made them feel the dread we had carried for so long. The screams of their dying filled the ruins. The walls were painted with their black blood. And every time one of them fell, we whispered the same words into their empty faces. "You wanted monsters. Here we are." And the monsters we became weren't just killing for survival anymore. We were killing for vengeance, for the satisfaction of watching gods bleed. It was ugly. It was brutal. It was everything humanity was never supposed to be. And it was only the beginning. The first time I saw an alien hesitate, really hesitate, was the night we burned their camp. They had built it on the bones of a city block, their spires of cold steel jutting out of the ruins like knives. Dozens of them patrolled with their silent precision, drones circling above like vultures. For weeks we'd studied them, counting shifts, learning patterns. Patience was all we had left, and patience had turned us into hunters. We struck at dusk, when the sky still glowed orange from fires that never died. Our traps were crude, barrels of fuel stolen from their transports. Wired with old car batteries and broken phones. Human ingenuity made from scraps, but ingenuity fueled by hatred is sharper than any blade. The explosions tore through their camp like thunder. Black fire swallowed their towers. Drones fell screaming from the sky. And we were already in the smoke, knives in hand, guns roaring. I remember grabbing one of them by the throat, slamming its head against a steel girder until its mask cracked like glass. Behind me, Daniel drove his knife into another's spine again and again, screaming so loud I thought his throat would rip apart. They fought back, but not like before. Not with calm detachment. Not with godlike confidence. This time, I saw their movements falter, their steps stutter, their heads turning too quickly, scanning shadows that weren't there. Fear. We had infected them with it. By the time dawn came, the camp was ash. Their corpses, what was left of them, hung from the ruins like warnings. We carved words into the metal of their broken towers. We are the monsters now. And for the first time, the hunters refused to enter the city again. The world outside our ruined stronghold didn't get better. Whole continents still burned. Their ships still blotted out the sky. But everywhere whispers spread. Survivors carried stories like wildfire. Humans striking back. Humans making gods bleed. Humans becoming something darker. Our pack grew again. Men with hollow eyes. Women who had lost everything but their fists. Children too young to fight but old enough to carry blades. They all came to us, drawn by the promise of vengeance, by the fire we had lit in the ashes. But something changed in me too. I started to see myself in the reflections of their silver masks. My hands were stained black from their blood, my voice raw from screaming promises of death into their faces. At night, when I closed my eyes, I didn't dream of the world we had lost. I dreamed of killing, of more screams, more blood, more victories. And sometimes, when the flames burned high and their bodies swung from nooses, I caught Daniel's grin. The same grin he wore after our first kill. A grin too sharp, too wide. He was enjoying this. Maybe I was too. That scared me more than the aliens ever had. The aliens changed their tactics. Instead of patrols, they began sending squads, 20, 30 at a time. Heavier weapons. Armored vehicles that rolled through rubble like tanks. Drones carrying fire that melted steel, but they made a mistake. They thought numbers would save them. They didn't understand that numbers only made the slaughter louder. We ambushed one of their squads in the skeleton of an old shopping mall. We had lined the upper floors with explosives, filled the ground with spikes of rebar. They walked straight into the kill zone, their arrogance leading the way. The explosions rained hell from above. The rebar tore their bodies apart, and when the smoke cleared, we were already there, crawling from the shadows like demons. I'll never forget the sound of them trying to retreat. The calm soldiers of Genocide suddenly panicked, their movements frantic. One of them dropped its weapon, trying to claw its way over rubble. Daniel caught it, pinned it down, and carved its mask off piece by piece while it writhed beneath him. The others watched. None of us stopped him. When it was over, he stood there holding its mask, his hands dripping black. He raised it above his head and shouted, "You wanted monsters!" The survivors echoed him. A roar that shook the ruins. And I felt it again, that terrible pride. We weren't just fighting back anymore, we were building something. A legend. A nightmare. And legends spread faster than bullets. Reports trickled in from other survivor groups. They were copying us, using fear as a weapon, hanging alien corpses from bridges, burning their camps. Whispers of the monster packs reached even the darkest tunnels. We hadn't just infected them with fear, we had infected humanity with something worse. I wanted to believe it was hope. But deep down, I knew better. It was bloodlust. The aliens began to retaliate differently, not with brute force, with cruelty. They started leaving human bodies displayed in their camps, not just killed, mutilated, carved open, their insides laid bare like warnings. They wanted to show us what happens when vermin bite back. One day, we found a row of children strung up on lampposts, their faces peeled away. Daniel was the first to see it. He didn't cry, didn't scream. He just stared, his fists shaking. Then he turned to me and said, "We're not going far enough." I didn't ask what he meant. I already knew. That night we planned something worse than an ambush, worse than a strike. We planned terror. Their supply convoys moved through the ruins every week, carrying weapons and fuel to their camps. They guarded them heavily. but their arrogance still made them blind. We set traps along the route, explosives buried in rubble, dead ends rigged with collapsing buildings. When the convoy came, we didn't just destroy it. We made it a show. Explosions tore through their vehicles, fire swallowing the street. The few that survived stumbled out, dazed and broken, and we were waiting. We didn't kill them quickly. We didn't kill them cleanly. We dragged them into the open, stripped their masks, forced them to look at us as we gutted them one by one. Daniel carved words into their bodies before leaving them strung up across the road. Monsters live here by dawn. The convoy was nothing but burning wreckage and mutilated corpses, and the message was clear. No road was safe, no patrol untouchable. For the first time since the war began, the aliens stopped moving during daylight. That was when I realized the truth. We were winning. Not the war, not yet, but the battle of fear. They had wanted to cleanse us like vermin, but we had become something worse than vermin. We had become predators, and predators don't stop when the prey begins to run. We chase, we devour. But victory tasted like ash, because every step deeper into vengeance, I could feel something slipping away, my humanity, my soul, whatever word you want to use, it was fading. I looked at Daniel sometimes, and didn't see the boy who once asked me about monsters. I saw a beast, grinning through blood, his eyes hollow except for fire. And when I caught myself smiling back, I realized I was no different. The aliens had called us a disease. They had wanted to wipe us out before we infected the stars. But maybe we weren't the disease. Maybe we were something worse. We had become the monsters they always feared. And monsters don't just fight. Monsters consume. This was no longer about survival. It was about extinction. Theirs or ours. And I had already chosen. I used to think cities died when bombs fell. That once the buildings crumbled and the streets ran with blood, a city was nothing more than a carcass. But I was wrong. Cities don't die. They rot. And rot can spread. We made the ruins our kingdom. The subway tunnels, the broken highways, the blackened towers. They became our hunting grounds. The aliens controlled the skies, but the ground belonged to us. By now, we weren't just scavengers with knives. We had weapons, real ones, plasma rifles ripped from their dead, grenades pieced together from stolen munitions, even parts of their drones rewired and twisted into bombs. We weren't soldiers anymore. We were butchers with toys stolen from the gods. And butchers don't just cut. They slaughter. It started with their power stations, massive towers of cold, humming metal, rising out of the rubble like stakes in the heart of the world. They fed their war machines, their drones, their weapons. And we wanted them to choke. We studied one for weeks. The patrols, the drones, the engineers that moved in and out. They thought their technology made them untouchable. They thought human eyes couldn't understand it. But desperation makes you smarter than you've ever been. Daniel was the one who cracked it. He had grown into something unrecognizable by then, scarred, wild-eyed, his grin more wolf than boy. But his mind was sharp as a blade. He found a weakness, the cooling vents at the base, vulnerable, exposed, never guarded. We crawled through sewer lines choked with rats and filth to reach them, hours in the dark, gagging on the stench. When we came out, we were at their doorstep. The vents loomed above us, glowing faintly, hot enough to blister skin. We planted explosives, crude but heavy, enough to split steel. And as we retreated, crawling back through filth, I heard Daniel whisper, "This is just the beginning." The explosion lit the night like a second sun. The tower screamed as it collapsed, blue fire erupting into the sky. The shockwave flattened buildings for blocks, and for the first time we heard them scream. Not calm, not mechanical, a real scream. The gods had bled before. Now they were burning. That victory was more than fire. It was a message. The next day, across the ruins, more power stations fell. Not by us, by others. Survivors who had heard what we'd done, who had stolen our methods, who had grown their own teeth. We weren't one pack anymore. We were an infection spreading across the world. The aliens responded with fury. Their fleets unleashed storms of fire, erasing whole districts in seconds. Their soldiers marched through rubble, killing anything that moved. But it didn't matter. The more they killed, the more survivors joined us. And the more we killed, the darker we became. The next target was bigger, riskier. A ship. Not one of their massive war machines that hung in the sky like gods. No, we weren't ready for that. But a transport ship, smaller, vulnerable when it landed. It came down outside the city, in the crater of an old stadium. Dozens of soldiers poured out, unloading supplies. Drones circled above. To anyone else, it would have been suicide. To us, it was opportunity. We spent days crawling closer, setting traps, burying explosives, sharpening knives. We watched from the shadows as they moved, their silver masks flashing in the floodlights. The night we struck, the stadium became a tomb. Explosions ripped through the ground, swallowing their machines. We poured out of the tunnels like rats, knives flashing, guns blazing. I remember the sound of the ship's engines struggling to rise, choking on fire. I remember Daniel climbing its ramp, plasma rifle in hand, firing into the crew as they screamed in voices I'd never heard before. We didn't just destroy it, we took it. By dawn, the ship was ours. Smoke poured from its hull, bodies littered the crater. But it still stood. And when we powered it up, hearing its alien systems roar under our hands, I realized something I hadn't dared to believe before. We weren't just hunters anymore. We were thieves, parasites. We had stolen a piece of their godhood, and if we could take one ship, why not more? The infection spread faster than ever. Every survivor group wanted to strike ships now. Some failed, burned alive by fire from the skies. But some succeeded. And every success sent waves of fear through the alien ranks. We began to see it clearly. Their patrols weren't just hesitant anymore, they were paranoid. Their drones scanned endlessly, circling shadows, firing at nothing. Their soldiers stuck close together, no longer striding with confidence. The gods were afraid of the dark, and we were the dark. But victory carried its own curse. The more powerful we became, the less human we looked to ourselves. I saw it in Daniel most of all. His grin had become permanent, his eyes hollow. He didn't speak of survival anymore. He spoke of extinction, not theirs or ours, just theirs. They don't deserve this world, he told me one night, staring into the flames of a burning tower. They don't deserve to breathe the same air. We're not fighting for humanity anymore. Humanity's already gone. We're fighting for monsters. I didn't argue. Because I knew he was right. The ship we stole became our base. We patched its wounds with scraps, powered it with stolen fuel, rewired its systems with human hands that had no business touching alien metal. It wasn't perfect. But it flew. And once it flew, we weren't bound to the ruins anymore. We struck their camps in distant cities. We bombed their convoys from the air. We turned their own weapons against them, leaving craters where their strongholds had stood. The look on their faces, those empty masks cracking when they saw their own ship raining fire upon them, was worth every drop of blood we had spilled. They had called us vermin. Now we were gods, but power is a poison. The more we tasted it, the more reckless we became. Ambushes turned into massacres. Raids turned into slaughters. We no longer spared anyone, not soldiers, not workers, not even their young. Daniel especially. He hunted them with a hunger that made even my blood run cold. One night, after a raid, I found him kneeling beside the body of an alien child. Small, frail, its silver skin dull. His knife was in its chest. His grin was wide. They wanted monsters, he whispered, his voice shaking with laughter, and now they have them. I wanted to stop him, to tell him we had gone too far, but I couldn't, because deep down, I knew I would have done the same, and that terrified me more than anything. The aliens had come to cleanse us, to erase us like vermin. But in their arrogance, they had given us something worse than extinction. They had given us a reason. And now, with their blood on our hands and their ships under our control, we weren't fighting to survive anymore. We were fighting to end them. All of them. Every last one. And I swore to the burning sky, if they wanted monsters, we would give them monsters until the stars themselves turned black. The ship wasn't built for us. Every wall hummed with energy we didn't understand. Every console blinked in patterns that weren't meant for human eyes. The air itself stank of metal and ozone, a taste that clung to the back of the throat. It was theirs. Alien. Holy. But it was ours now. We patched its wounds with steel scavenged from ruins. We replaced fried conduits with copper wire stolen from skyscrapers. We rewired systems with hands that trembled but didn't stop. None of us knew what we were doing. But rage is a teacher sharper than any book. Daniel was the one who named it. The Black Fang, he said, running his blood-stained fingers along the hull. Because we're not soldiers anymore. We're predators, and predators need teeth. The pack roared in approval. They worshipped him now, more than they worshipped me. And I didn't blame them. Daniel had become something greater than a boy, greater than a man. He was the embodiment of what we all had become, monster wrapped in human skin. And monsters don't hide. Monsters hunt. We flew the Black Fang low, beneath radar, skimming the bones of dead cities. Every rumble of its engines made the ground quake, and survivors in the ruins looked up with something I hadn't seen in years. Not fear, not despair, hope. It felt wrong, because what we were building wasn't hope. It was vengeance dressed in stolen steel. But hope spreads, no matter how poisoned. Soon, messages came flooding into our tunnels. Survivor groups wanted to join us. Wanted to learn, wanted to kill. We weren't a pack anymore. We were a plague. The fleet installation sat on the coast, where the ocean had been boiled to black by their engines. Spires rose from the shoreline, vast and silver, reaching into the clouds. At their base, rows of war machines stood in perfect lines, tanks that could shatter mountains, drones like swarms of steel locusts, ships that cast shadows for miles. It was a fortress, untouchable. But Daniel's grin only widened when he saw it. "This is it," he said. "This is where we show them." I knew what he meant. We'd bled them, burned them. But this? This was different. This was a knife in the heart. We spent weeks planning, studying patrols, power cycles, fleet movements. Every detail mattered. Every mistake meant death. And still, when the day came, I knew we weren't ready. But readiness had nothing to do with it. This wasn't about survival anymore. This was about spectacle. And monsters don't ask if they're ready. They leap. We came in at night, riding low over the Black Sea. The spires loomed ahead, glowing faintly with alien light. Drones circled above like stars dragged down from the sky. "Closer," Daniel ordered, his voice steady. "Right into their throat." The alarms sounded before we touched land. Lights flared, drones swarmed, engines roared. But it didn't matter. Because our plan was never to sneak. Our plan was to terrify. We opened fire with everything the Black Fang had. Stolen plasma cannons, crude bombs strapped to its hull, even sharpened steel rods hurled into their lines. Explosions tore through their ranks, fire painting the ocean red. Their soldiers screamed in that inhuman hum, their perfect formations collapsing into chaos. And then we unleashed the real weapon. The cargo hold burst open, releasing cages built from rusted steel. And from those cages poured survivors. men and women who had once been prisoners, now armed with blades, guns, fury. We dropped them straight into the heart of the installation like wolves thrown into a pen of sheep. The screams that followed weren't just alien. They were human, too. Survivors carving, tearing, laughing. Blood, black and red, splashed across the silver walls. The installation became a slaughterhouse. I led the charge into the spires. My rifle roared, my knife split silver throats. Every step was chaos, every breath fire. I remember one of them reaching for me, taller than 2 men, its blade dripping with plasma. I buried my knife in its eye and whispered, "Monster." Behind me, Daniel had gone mad. He painted the walls with their blood, carving words into their bodies. "You wanted this." His laughter echoed louder than the gunfire. The aliens fought back, of course. Their weapons melted stone, their drones tore men apart. But the more they killed, the wilder we became. Fear had broken them. Hate had broken us. And broken things are dangerous. By dawn, the installation was ash. Spires toppled into the sea, their machines burning, their ships sinking beneath black waves. And strung up along the ruins, we left their bodies, carved with the words that had become our creed. Monsters live here. The world changed after that. The aliens had erased cities before. They had slaughtered millions without hesitation. But this was different. This was theirs, their stronghold, their pride. And it was gone. Across the ruins, survivors rose like fire from ash. They struck camps, convoys, even warships. The plague had spread too far to contain, and for the first time the fleets pulled back. Not far. Not yet. But enough. Enough to tell us the truth. We had made them afraid. But fear cuts both ways. That night, as we celebrated in the ruins of the installation, I saw Daniel sitting alone, his hands still black with blood. His grin was gone. His eyes were wide, trembling. "They're going to answer," he whispered. "You know they will." I nodded, because he was right. We hadn't just wounded them, we had humiliated them. And gods don't forgive humiliation. But it didn't matter. Because we weren't human anymore. We were monsters. And monsters don't beg for mercy. They demand extinction. In the weeks that followed, the skies darkened with their fleets. More ships than I had ever seen. Enough to drown the world in fire. Daniel stood beside me on the hull of the Black Fang, staring at the burning horizon. His grin had returned, sharp as a blade. "They wanted monsters," he said again, his voice calm, steady. "Let's give them extinction." And as the fleets descended, I realized something. This wasn't about survival. This wasn't even about revenge anymore. This was about proving them right. They had called us monsters. And now, we would show them just how right they were. The sea burned for days after the fleet installation fell. Oil, blood, alien fire, all mixed into a black tide that lapped against the ruins of the coast. The spires lay twisted and broken, jutting out of the ocean like the ribs of some dead giant. From the deck of the Black Fang, I watched the smoke spiral into the sky. Survivors sang in the tunnels, their voices hoarse but triumphant. For the first time in years, humanity felt like it had struck back, truly struck back. But victory is a cruel teacher. It whispers sweet things while sharpening knives behind your back. Because when gods bleed, they don't retreat. They come back with storms. The retaliation came at dawn, weeks later. The sky tore open with the sound of thunder that wasn't thunder. Fleets, hundreds of ships, their shadows swallowing the horizon. Larger than anything we had seen before, their hulls glowing with a sick light. We scrambled. Survivor groups hid in ruins. Some begged us to flee into the mountains, into the forests, anywhere the fleets couldn't see. But Daniel only laughed. "This is it," he said, standing on the hull of the Black Fang, his eyes wild. "They've finally noticed us. We're in their heads. Now let's tear out their heart. The fleets began their purge. Fire rained from the skies, turning cities into craters. Towers melted into rivers of glass. Entire blocks disappeared in bursts of light. The ground itself shook, splitting open beneath the weight of their wrath. I saw thousands die in minutes, survivors vaporized in the tunnels. Children crushed beneath collapsing stone. Their screams were drowned by the roar of alien fire. We struck back, of course. Ambushes, bombs, traps. The Black Fang rose into the air, spitting stolen fire into their ships. We brought down 3 that day, maybe 4. But for every ship that fell, 10 more descended. And for the first time since the war began, I felt it again. Helplessness. The survivors looked to us for answers. Their eyes were hollow, desperate. "What now?" they asked. "Where do we run?" But Daniel didn't speak of running. He didn't speak of hiding. He spoke of escalation. "They want extinction," he said to the pack, his voice calm, steady. "So let's give them ours or theirs. Nothing in between." The others nodded. Some cheered, their faces lit with firelight, their eyes black with hate. And I realized the truth. We weren't fighting for humanity anymore. Humanity was already ash. We were fighting for vengeance, for spite, for the satisfaction of dragging gods into the mud before we died. And that was enough. We turned the Black Fang into a weapon. Every pipe became a launcher. Every corridor became a bomb. We rigged its engines to burn hotter than they were ever meant to burn. We carved words into its hull. Monsters live here. And then we made our plan. Not to survive, not to rebuild, to strike the fleets themselves, their motherships, the floating fortresses that hung in the skies, commanding the purge, untouchable, invincible, until now. The plan was suicide. Fly into the heart of their fleet, tear through their ranks, ram the Black Fang straight into their mothership, detonate everything we had. We argued for hours. Some wanted to wait, to strike smaller targets, to bleed them slowly. But Daniel shut them down with a single question. "Do you want to die as vermin or as monsters?" No one answered. Because we already knew. The night before the strike, the tunnels were quiet. Survivors whispered prayers that no god would hear. Children clung to their mothers, hollow-eyed. Men sharpened knives they would never use. I sat alone on the deck, staring at the burning horizon. My hands shook, not with fear, but with something worse. Excitement that terrified me more than death. Daniel joined me, his grin sharp as ever. He looked out at the smoke, at the fleets blotting out the stars. "We're going to make them remember us," he said. I nodded, because there was nothing else left to say. We launched at dawn. The Black Fang screamed into the sky, engines burning hotter than hell. Behind us, survivors raised their fists, their voices carrying through the ruins. Not cheers, not songs, roars, the sound of monsters unchained. The fleets opened fire the moment they saw us. The sky lit with plasma, with storms of energy that melted stone mid-air. But we didn't dodge. We didn't run. We dove straight into their teeth. The ship shook, alarms screaming. Panels burst, flames licked the walls. Men screamed as fire tore through the corridors. But we didn't stop. Daniel stood at the controls, his eyes blazing. "Faster!" he shouted, his voice drowned by the roar. "Straight into their heart!" And we obeyed. The first ships fell in a storm of fire. We ripped through their ranks, cannons spitting death. Explosions bloomed around us, their soldiers scattering. Drones swarmed like insects, their fire clawing at our hull. But we pressed on. I remember one of their ships looming ahead, massive, its guns glowing with power. Daniel laughed, slamming us straight into its belly. The impact tore steel apart, fire erupting. We burst through the other side, leaving it burning behind us. The pack roared, not men anymore, beasts, monsters. And then we saw it. The mothership. It hung in the sky like a god, vast and terrible, its shadow swallowing the world. Towers rose from its hull, weapons glowing, engines pulsing like a heartbeat. Untouchable, invincible, until now. The black fang screamed as we dove toward it. Every alarm blared, every system burned. The ship was dying, tearing itself apart around us. But we didn't care. Daniel stood tall, his grin wide, his eyes on fire. "They wanted monsters," he roared, his voice carrying over the chaos. "Let's show them extinction." We hit the hull like a knife through flesh. Metal screamed, fire erupted, alarms howled. The mothership shook under the impact, its towers collapsing, its engines faltering. And then we detonated everything. Explosives, engines, weapons, ourselves. The world vanished in white fire. When I woke, there was nothing but silence. The sky was ash, the sea black. The mothership lay broken, its vast hull split in two, its towers burning. The fleets scattered, their perfect formations broken. We had done it. We had torn down a god, but around me lay only corpses. My pack, my monsters, my brothers. Daniel among them, his grin frozen in death. I was alone. Alone in victory. Alone in extinction. And as I stared at the burning sky, I realized the truth. We hadn't just won. We had become the very thing they feared. And maybe that was the only way humanity was ever going to survive. By becoming monsters so terrible that even gods would bleed. The mothership's corpse lay across the sea like a continent torn in half. Its towers burned, its engines bled black fire, its carcass split by the wound we had carved into it. The sky above was gray with smoke, ash falling like snow onto the water. I woke in the ruins of the Black Fang, half buried in steel, my body broken but alive. Why me? Why not Daniel? Why not the others? Survival didn't feel like a gift anymore. It felt like a punishment. The silence was the worst part. No laughter, no roars, no voices calling for vengeance, just the soft crackle of flames and the endless hiss of the sea boiling against alien steel. We had killed a god. But in doing so, we had killed ourselves. Days blurred together. I scavenged food from corpses, drank rainwater that tasted of smoke. Sometimes I thought I heard voices in the wreckage, Daniel's laugh, the screams of the pack. But they were only echoes in my head. On the fourth day, I saw movement, human, survivors crawling across the ruins, bloodied but alive, men, women, even children. Some wore the scars of the pack, eyes wild, hands trembling, grins sharp. Others were just broken souls who had been caught in the storm. They looked at me differently, not as a man, not even as a leader, as something more, as if by surviving the impossible, I had become what Daniel had dreamed of, a monster crowned by fire. I hated it, but I didn't deny it, because hate was all we had left. The fleets didn't vanish after the mothership fell. They staggered, scattered, lost their perfect formations, but they didn't leave. In the distance, we saw them regroup. Smaller ships circled like vultures, repairing, reorganizing. For the first time, their movements weren't flawless. They were desperate, and desperation makes even gods weak. The survivors gathered around me in the wreckage. Their faces were hollow, their eyes black with fire. "What now?" they asked. I should have told them to hide, to rebuild, to cling to what scraps of humanity we had left. But when I opened my mouth, the words that came out weren't mine. "Now," I said, my voice hoarse, "we finish what we started." And they roared. We built our new base in the carcass of the mothership. Its vast halls became our tunnels, its broken engines became our forges, Its alien weapons became ours. Children ran through corridors dripping with alien blood, their laughter sharp as knives. Men sharpened blades on alien steel, their hands trembling with hunger for more. Women carved messages into the walls, the same words we had painted across every battlefield. Monsters live here. I watched them and felt the truth sink into my bones. Humanity was gone. What remained was something else, something born in fire and blood. And maybe that was the point. At night, I stood on the broken hull and watched the alien fleets circle in the distance. They didn't approach, not yet. They were afraid. But fear doesn't last. Eventually, they would strike again, with more fire, more fury, more genocide. I thought of Daniel, of his grin, of the way his knife carved words into their flesh. He had been right all along. This wasn't about survival. It wasn't even about revenge anymore. It was about extinction, theirs or ours, and I already knew which one I wanted. The survivors became soldiers, not the kind I once knew, disciplined, uniformed, human. These were beasts wrapped in human skin. They painted their faces with ash, wore bones around their necks, carried alien blades like trophies. I tried to stop it at first, tried to remind them of what we had lost, but they only laughed. Humanity is dead, one of them told me, his grin wide. We buried it in the flames, now we're something better. Better. The word echoed in my head like a curse. Our first raid from the carcass was small, a supply convoy skirting the coast. We struck at night, crawling through the waves, climbing their ships like rats. The fight was short, brutal. Alien blood splashed across the decks, mixing with human laughter. We didn't just kill them, we tore them apart. When it was over, we dragged their corpses back to the mothership's wreckage, stringing them from its towers like banners. Their black blood dripped into the sea, staining it darker than before. And when the survivors cheered, I realized something chilling. The aliens had called us a disease. But we weren't a disease. We were the cure for their arrogance. The cure for their genocide. The cure for every god who thought themselves untouchable. And cures aren't gentle. Cures burn, cures cut, cures kill. But in the quiet hours, when the flames burned low and the sea hissed against alien steel, I felt the weight pressing down. We had become what they feared. That was our strength. But it was also our doom. Could something like us ever rebuild? Could something like us ever love, ever create, ever hope? Or had we carved out our own extinction the moment we chose to become monsters? I didn't know. And maybe I didn't care, because the fleets were still out there. And until they burned, nothing else mattered. One night, a boy no older than 12 came to me. His face was streaked with ash, his hands trembling as he held a knife too large for him. "Teach me," he said. "Teach you what?" I asked. "How to be a monster." I looked at him, at the fire in his eyes, at the blood on his hands, and I realized the truth. There was no going back. Humanity wasn't reborn in those ruins. Humanity had ended. What rose from the ashes was something else entirely, something the aliens would never forget. In the distance, the fleets stirred. Engines roared, weapons glowed, ships turned toward us like wolves circling a wounded bear. They were coming, and for the first time, I didn't feel fear. I felt hunger, because monsters don't fear the dark. Monsters are the dark. And the dark was about to swallow them whole. The fleets came at dawn. The sky split open with their fire, ships blotting out the sun, engines screaming like thunder, hundreds of them, thousands, enough to erase not just a city, not just a continent, but the world itself. They came for us, the last wound we had carved into their pride, the carcass of their mothership that we had turned into our fortress. They wanted to cleanse it, to burn it from the sea, to erase the infection once and for all. But infection spread. And we were ready. The wreckage had become a citadel. Towers rebuilt from alien steel, weapons ripped from their ships mounted on broken spires, traps buried in the sea like teeth waiting to bite. Survivors swarmed through the halls. Not survivors anymore. Not really. Monsters. Their faces painted black with ash, their bodies draped in bones, their eyes burning with hunger. I stood at the highest tower, the sea wind tearing at my face, my rifle heavy in my hands. Beneath me, the pack howled. Not men, not women, not children, beasts, wolves, demons. They looked to me, and I gave them the only truth left. They wanted monsters, I shouted, my voice echoing across the sea. Now we show them extinction. The roar that answered shook the steel beneath my feet, and then the battle began. The first wave hit like a storm. Drones blackened the sky, their fire raining down in endless torrents. The sea boiled, towers collapsed, men screamed. But we answered with fire of our own, stolen cannons spitting death, explosives tearing the waves apart, traps shredding drones like paper. I fired until my rifle melted in my hands. I threw knives until my arms burned. Every shot, every strike, every kill felt like a heartbeat, a rhythm that drove me forward. The monsters around me fought like nothing human. They leapt onto drones, tearing them apart with bare hands. They carved messages into alien corpses even as fire consumed them. They died laughing, grinning, roaring. The fleets faltered. Not much, not enough. But they faltered. And in that hesitation, I saw it again. Fear. The second wave was worse. Warships descended, their guns glowing with light that could melt mountains. They circled us, closing in, ready to erase everything with one final strike. Daniel's voice echoed in my head. Do you want to die as vermin or as monsters? I chose. We lit the sea on fire, barrels of fuel, explosives, everything we had left. The ocean itself erupted, flames leaping sky high, swallowing ships whole. War machines crashed into the waves, their screams hissing into silence. The survivors howled, their voices rising over the roar of the flames. "Monsters live here!" they screamed, over and over, louder and louder, until it wasn't just a cry, it was a truth. But the fleets didn't stop. The mothership had fallen, but this wasn't one god anymore. This was an army of gods, and armies don't die easily. They closed in, their fire tearing our citadel apart. Towers collapsed, spires fell into the sea, men and women vanished in bursts of light. The wreckage shook, groaned, screamed. We were dying. And yet, I laughed. Because this was how monsters were meant to die, not in silence, not in shadows, but in fire, in chaos, in terror so great it made gods tremble. I fought until my body gave out. My arms burned, my legs shook, my vision blurred. But I kept going. Knife in hand, blood in my mouth, laughter in my throat. I saw a boy, no older than 12, leap onto a drone, stabbing again and again until the fire consumed him. I saw a woman tear the mask off an alien with her bare hands, screaming into its face as it died. I saw men, broken and bleeding, crawling forward with bombs strapped to their chests, throwing themselves beneath war machines. And in that moment, I realized the truth. We weren't losing, we were winning. Not the war, not survival, but the only thing that mattered. Fear. They would remember this, forever. The fleets closed in, the citadel crumbled, fire swallowed the sea, and still, we roared. I don't remember the moment the world vanished, only the sound. The sound of monsters dying, not in silence, not in despair, but in laughter. And then, nothing. When I woke, the world was quiet. The fleets were gone. The sky was gray. The sea was black. The citadel was ash, I was alone, again. Bodies floated in the water, human, alien, all the same now. The sea carried them together, tangled in death. I staggered to my feet, my body broken, my hands dripping with blood that wasn't mine. The air stank of smoke and iron, and for the first time I understood. We hadn't saved humanity. We hadn't survived. We had burned. We had screamed. We had torn gods from the sky. And in doing so, we had left something behind. Not hope, not peace, not life, a memory, a legend, a warning carved into the stars themselves. The aliens would rebuild. I knew that. They had more fleets, more gods, more fire. They would return. But they would never forget. Because they had come here to erase a disease, to cleanse vermin, to end a mistake. And instead they found monsters. Monsters that laughed in the face of extinction. Monsters that bled them, burned them, broke them. Monsters that tore their gods from the sky and left their corpses burning on the sea. We had given them what they wanted. And more. Because monsters don't die. They linger in memories, in legends, in warnings whispered across galaxies. And long after my body rots, long after the sea swallows this wreckage, long after the stars burn out, one truth will remain. Earth answered. They wanted monsters. We showed them monsters.